The 100th anniversary of the premier event for the world's watch and jewelry industry, Baselworld, once again witnessed the start of a new trend-setting cycle while placing on a pedestal passion, precision and perfection. However, in terms of value, the Swiss watch industry remains the world's largest exporter. In 2016, the Swiss watch exports were even lower than in the previous year.
So what I see is that we have a very split market. It doesn't go in one direction. You have some brands which are still faring really well. Other brands have difficulties. The brands which have the most difficulties are of course the ones which were the most exposed to China, because China has imposed new taxes. There is this anti-corruption campaign which continues. There are also the currency problems, terrorism, of course. We've seen this in London this week. So all these factors affect the industry, but I remain quite optimistic. Yeah, I think it's a stabilization moment, because the watch industry has been living with two-digit growth for many years. Now it's back to new normals with one-digit growth, or you try not to lose too much money. So China will remain in the top 1, 2, 3 markets. The US is very important, Europe is very important. I think you need to have a good balance between Asia, Europe and America to have a strong brand. And maybe these last years there have been too much focus on China, which is very good when the numbers are going up, which is very bad when it's going down.
The stars and the time they measure have seen many stories start and end. Some stories end abruptly, others echo down the eons. According to McKinsey & Company, the future of watch and jewelry industry belongs to branded items, which in the watch market already account for 60% of sales.
100 years ago was the start of the Russian Revolution. And whilst it was the start of the Russian Revolution, it in many respects marked the end of the House of Fabergé. And of the series of 50 imperial eggs that were made by the House of Fabergé for the Russian imperial family, one of them was unfinished because of the start of the Russian Revolution. And that was the 1917 Constellation egg. And so this year, 2017, when we decided to make a revolutionary new chronograph, we thought it would be appropriate to pay homage to the 1917 Constellation egg.
So the Fabergé Visionnaire chronograph is really a new addition to the Fabergé Visionnaire collection we have introduced 2 years ago. All our watches are expressing the DNA of Fabergé, which is the surprise, the discovery. And we have, for example, the Lady Compliquée with the peacock opening the feather and indicating the time. We have the Fabergé Dalliance with the Lady Levity and all the Lady Libertine, always with, again, a new design or something in the center of the watch. And this is something we are really keen about, always to play with the center of the watch, because every surprise was always at the heart of the egg. So when an egg had the surprise, that was always in the middle of the watch. So that's why also when we started just developing the new chronograph, we were really like convinced that it's something really for Fabergé. Everything which is quite innovative in this watch, that means the movement and the chronograph module, is at the heart of the watch, which is the agent graph. So we keep the family feeling that we had with the Visionnaire DTZ last year, with the second time zone in the middle. This time the surprise is really to have this technical innovation, and we really keep the main time indication on the periphery of the watch.
First of all, if you look at the new development of our in-house manufactured caliber at Breitling, we launched the first one in 2009 with the B01, and we always we had a thinking of how kind of function we will add to this space function. And one of our priority was the rattrapante. Rattrapante is a split-second chronograph, which is the most difficult complication you can have in mechanical chronographs. So but it was a priority. We named the well, in the beginning we named the caliber BO3, which meant that was in the podium of our priority. It took a little bit of time, but finally we made it, and we made it properly. I watch here, that's the rattrapante, and you can see that's, of course, we used our iconic model, the Navitimer, to have the first in-house manufactured rattrapante mechanism within Breitling. It's very easy to use. You just press, and the rattrapante, to catch up in French, is used to measure intermediate time. So if you stop here on the pusher, which is integrated in the crown, you have a split second hand which stops, so you can read the intermediate time, and then you can catch up, and you can continue to time.
Der Wunsch war eigentlich, eine professionelle Fliegeruhr zu bauen, nicht nur die optische Anlehnung an gewisse Elemente zu suchen, sondern dem Piloten ein Instrument an die Hand zu geben, das er nutzen kann, wenn die technischen Instrumente ausfallen, was er dann nutzen kann, um eine Maschine noch sicher zu landen, in Kombination mit dem Bordkompass. Das ist mit einer DIN geprüften Uhr möglich. So hat man besondere Anforderungen gegen betriebstypische Flüssigkeiten, Gehbelastungen, Ablesbarkeit, Kompatibilität mit Nachtsichtgeräten. Das geht also in ganz andere Bereiche als nur eine Uhr, die das Heritage der Fliegeruhr bedient. Ja.
In my opinion, it's not only one point, it's different topics for this big grow up in the last years, not in the last year, in the last 3 or 4 years. One point is our price range. The next point is our simple, our good design. It's coming from Bauhaus and Werkbund. And the next point is the investment in the last years in technology, in know-how, in Glashütte, in employees is this what Nomos, or is for Nomos very helpful to grow up year per year more and more.
The story will be new materials, the story will be ultralight, and the story will be related to space. So the most interesting part will be after space, because once we go to Mars, we come back. And we will come back with a few elements of Mars, which one day or later we're going to use in the watch.
Zenith has his famous El Primero model, which was a movement which was launched in 1969, which is by chance also the year where the first Range Rover SUV, the so-called grandfather of all SUVs, was launched. So this is a similarity of history. But what is the synergy between an SUV, a car manufacturer, and the watch manufacturer? It's simple, the mix of materials. The dedicated watch for Range Rover is made of caramelized aluminium, which means it's very light, it's very trendy, and the modern high-tech material, the dial is made of aluminium and brushed. So materials which you can find in a modern SUV Range Rover nowadays, which is far away from heavy and slow moving. These are trendy driving machines, and this is the similarity.
Something that has changed in the behavior of consumers, which I think they like to have beautiful pieces, but maybe a bit more discreet. This also led us to launch the collection Pure, which is inspired by the classical ice cube, which was really high-end collection, mainly in the watches, less in the jewelry. But it's such a clean and zen design that it's, I think, perfect for the new millenniums, as you call them. At the same time, I think the young generation also is much more interested of the provenances, of how the piece was produced. They're asking much more questions than maybe the more classical clients. So I think it's a perfect way to launch the fair mind into the new world.
What makes us different from most of the other brands is we tackle a very, very young customer base. Some of our stories, especially if it comes to video games or Pokemon, they talk to 20-year-old customers and even sometimes younger than that, which makes that, I would say, the average customer of RJ today is maybe 25, which is very young for high-end watchmaking. So we tackle younger customers because we talk to younger customers. We have stories that they can connect to. So young customers, very hedonistic customers, collectors obviously, but then not just watch collectors, also people who collect stories. So I give you an example. We have quite a number of customers who bought Batman watches, not because they like watches, but because they love Batman. And so we also give the opportunity for people who are maybe not so interested in high-end watchmaking to suddenly enter in a new world because they enter to a different door.
True that when we started the watches 40 years ago, we started slowly and slowly in the know-how, and so it was simple watches, not complex, technically complex watches. So it was more quartz watches at the beginning, and so probably more oriented towards a feminine clientele. Then we integrated in the last 10 years, and we were able to come to mechanical movements, manufacture movements, and then address another type of watches, more complex, more around complications, Hermes complication about time, and that's why a vast majority of our models are designated today for the women. And as you know, as you just said, Cape Cod and Nantucket is one of our pillars since 25 years. They were created 25 years ago. We totally revamped the Cape Cod line last year to make it even more contemporary and fresh and modern and fancy. And it's a huge success since, and Nantucket is a jewelry version of the Cape Cod, so also a great hope in that line.
Ultra thin for me are the maximum way of expressing elegance for men, but in watchmaking they are usually an expression of traditional taste. They are designs from another generation, from 60, 70 years ago. And we believe as Italians that gentlemen should enjoy creativity for the times that you live in, and that's why we try to bring to ultra-thin watches a fresh and contemporary and a masculine elegance that is not only for a special occasion, but also to indulge every day with a luxury product.
It's a watch that was sold by Antiquorp in 2008 to a watch collector at a relatively high price for a brand that was asleep. It's quite impressive. And this watch was very interesting because he was taking together all the elements of the Čapek style, if you want, or the Čapek personality. What we were talking before, you know, about beauty, you know, that's so strange. And we liked also this watch because it was a relatively simple watch, so a 7-day movement. And so it's the watch that is here, it's the watch that won, you know, 1 year, exactly day per day. Now, that's incredible, no? So on November 10, 2015, we launched the brand with this watch. On November 10, 2016, this watch wins the Grand Prix de l'Horlogerie public prize.
The award-winning watch was actually, it has a great story because it's based upon church movement, which is maintained now by our father, but before by our grandfather. It's something that we grew up with. I went in that church already on my age of 6 or so. And that's a very impressive mechanical things going on in that church tower. And now these mechanical interactions, they are now built into our repertoire, our last award-winning watch.
Another challenge for the brands nowadays is being top of mind in a digital age. The mega trend affects business on the supply as well as demand sides. Watches and jewelry executives are turning to digital when addressing brand equity. Consuming luxury and even 3D printing is likely to play an important role as a prototype tool.
Hermès was one of the first luxury brands present on e-commerce before year 2000. I can just tell you that at the corporate level, the Hermès brand is preparing a new fantastic project regarding the digital experience, generally speaking, which is more a global experience between physical stores and digital touch point, which we would call omni-channel experience, which is key for tomorrow.
Our customers are on social media. Most of our customers, actually a big part of our customer base is even on Instagram and puts their collection on Instagram. So we get into direct contact. Obviously the digital has helped us to build bridges with our customers. But then in exchange, by building bridges, it doesn't only go one way. You know? They also expect you to behave different, to be much more open, much more transparent.
As you say, 3D printing is a very promising tool just for prototype, meaning building up the first watch so that the artistic direction can say, I like it or I don't like it, go, no go, just for that.
In my opinion, it will still never replace like doing like a prototype with more like the right materials, colors, to really feel it also on the wrist. But that's true that it really helps for the first steps of the watch development. So it will never replace, but that's really an improvement in order to be quicker into the decision about volume, proportions and design.
It is very complex and very long to produce some specific bespoke elements. So I think 3D printing has potential. Today it's good enough for prototyping. It's definitely not good enough for production or for creating end products because, well, the quality is not there yet.
And we did 3D printing for a prototype in Salon QP. We presented a prototype of that watch, the Lady Kedeberg. And I have to say the technique is not ready. Okay, we had the 3D printing in gold, in white gold, but the level of detail that requests horlogerie makes that you have barely something you can work with. Certainly not something you can show.
Instructions are never included. They vary with the strength of your ability to see, the measure of your selective blindness, the limits of your mercy, and the intensity of your desire.